Hello, this is Erica with Launching Legacies. Welcome to our daily devotional. Today we are doing an extended application from a story in John, the 11th chapter. It's the story of Lazarus. So Jesus and Lazarus are friends, and a miracle is going to happen. I'll tell you, this application is kind of long. So what I'm going to do is I'll do half the application today, the other half of the application tomorrow. And the first part of the application starts in John 11:1. And so it says, a man named Lazarus was sick, and he lived in Bethany with his sisters Mary and Martha. And this is the Mary who had poured the expensive perfume on the Lord's feet and wiped it with her hair. Her brother Lazarus was sick. And so the two sisters sent a message to Jesus telling him, Lord, your dear friend is very sick. Okay. But when Jesus heard about it, he said, Lazarus' sickness will not end in death. No, it happened for the glory of God, so that the Son of God will receive glory from this. So although Jesus loved Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, he stayed where he was for the next 2 days. And finally, he said to his disciples, let's go back to Judea. But the disciples objected. Rabbi, they said, only a few days ago, the people in Judea were trying to stone you. Are you going there again? And Jesus replied, well, there are 12 hours of daylight every day. During the day, people can walk safely. They can see because they have the light of this world. But at night, there is danger of stumbling because they have no light. Then he said, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but now I will go and wake him up. And the disciples said, Lord, if he sleep, he will be better soon. And they thought Jesus meant that Lazarus was simply sleeping, but Jesus meant Lazarus had died. And so he told them plainly, Lazarus is dead. And for your sakes, I'm glad I wasn't there, for now you will really believe. Come, let's see him. Okay, and so they went off to go see Lazarus. Okay, and we're going to stop there for this application. So let's talk about what's happening here. For one, Lazarus is a friend of Jesus, and Mary and Martha, they're all friends of Jesus. And so he knows them personally. And what happens that's peculiar is he tells Mary and Martha when they contact him and tell him that Lazarus is sick, is that this sickness will not end in death. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, that wasn't true because he ends up dying, right? And he says it to his disciples, no, Lazarus is dead. But he says it to them because he's like, look, we're going to go wake Lazarus up. So he may be dead now, but it's not going to result in death because Jesus always intended to raise Lazarus from the dead. And it's a really interesting application because from the beginning, if you don't know that about the story of Lazarus, if you don't know that Jesus' full intention was to raise Lazarus from the dead, then the rest of the story has a different application, especially the part where Jesus is at the grave and he's weeping and angry, and those different components, they mean something very different. But here we find out from the very first time that he hears about Lazarus' sickness, he says it won't result in death, but he knows he's going to physically die and be raised again. So that tells us more about Jesus' intentions in this regard. But here goes another part of the apple. So that's important. The details are extremely important. Jesus already knows he's going to raise Lazarus from the dead. He waits for him, and then he goes after his sickness has come to a certain place. And he says that it's important that this happen because now only God will be able to be glorified for what's about to happen. So it testifies to who Jesus is when he raises Lazarus from the dead. Okay? So that's one part. But the second application that I want to look at that is a little bit more detailed is to say this. Here goes a person in a bad situation. These people love Jesus. And Mary and Martha love Jesus. Lazarus loves Jesus. Why is it then that Jesus allows them to suffer the mourning or the loss, the grief of death? Because he does. He allows them to struggle with the sickness, and he allows the sickness to overcome Lazarus, all with the intention of raising him from the dead. But remember, Mary and Martha don't know that. And so many people, when they suffer, they struggle with the idea that, oh, God is allowing suffering. He's allowing me to go through. He's allowing me to have this dilemma. This is something that God is allowing. And that for some people makes them feel like God is not good. He's not kind. He's not good to them because he's allowed these things to happen. Now, I want you to recognize, for one, that death is in this world. And we're going to hear Martha testify to that later on in the story. She's going to say, yeah, well, this is the death, people die and we'll see him in glory. But, well, remember this. Suffering doesn't exist because God intends it to exist. But the scripture says that he will work out the good for those who love the Lord. So he'll work it out to our benefit, right? He'll cause it to work for our benefit. That's Romans 8:28. He'll cause it to turn around for us. And so this sickness could have just been sickness, but God wanted to get the glory and wanted to demonstrate that Jesus is the Son of God. And so although it seems like, okay, well, he's mean because he let them mourn and he let them grieve, you have to remember that his sight is far larger than our sight, right? Our ability to see what's coming next and what's going to happen is limited. And so sometimes in this world we will have suffering. Jesus told us that, but be of good cheer, he has overcome the world. And so we'll have things that we struggle with. We'll have issues and problems and things that we won't understand, dilemmas that we cannot reconcile. And most of those dilemmas are just the product of being in a fallen world and being in broken places. But also, God knows how to turn even the most common of our problems, the ones that are common amongst men, he knows how to turn those into his glory. And so we have to give him the permission to let him do that. And what's interesting about this application is the bitterness. And so later on we're going to see Mary and Martha, and they can be bitter toward God. They can be angry toward God. Like, God, we asked you to come while he was sick. We know you can heal the sick, right? Because they didn't know he healed the dead yet, but brought the dead back to life. But they knew he could heal the sick. And they're like, I know that you can do this, so why haven't you done what I know you can do, right? And maybe that's your thing too. God, I know you can do this, so why haven't you done what I know you can do? And the answer, honestly, in this story and in this application is because I want to do something that you don't know I can do. I want to give you something that you don't know that I can perform in your life. Some people think, well, there's no way I'll never be able to live again after this, or I'll never be able to have faith again after this, or I'll never be able to believe again after this. And God is like, just trust me to do the thing that you think you'll never be able to do. I can make that possible in your life. But in order for it to be possible, you have to go to the time of never. Right? You have to go to the time of impossible. They don't know Jesus can raise people from the dead because he hasn't been raising people from the dead. And so now we find that the friend is dead in order to manifest that God can do it. What is there in your life that God is saying, I know you don't want to get to this place because you really don't know if I can do this because you haven't seen this before. But if you get to this place, I'll demonstrate that I am who I said I am. And I can do what I said I can do. And even some of the things you haven't even asked me to do, I can do those things too. There's power demonstrated in this story. There's power demonstrated in Jesus's wait, his delay of going to see Lazarus. There's power demonstrated in that. And we need to recognize that that same power is the same power that is being demonstrated in our lives in the times where we're reaching the impossible. The implausible. I really don't know what to do now. Now everything is messed up. Why didn't you act sooner? Why didn't you do something faster? Because he's going to turn it around for his good. Can you believe that? I hope that you can. I hope that you'll learn to. And that you'll learn to trust God in these places. I'm praying for you. And I hope that you're praying for Launching Legacies because we do covet your prayers. We're going to continue this devotional and continue to talk about Jesus and Lazarus tomorrow and what happens next. Because now that we know that he intended to raise Lazarus from the dead, the paradigm shifts. And now we need to look at the rest of the story from another perspective. But this is good vantage point. What happens when you think God should act in point A and he doesn't act until point G? How do you handle that? Maybe you should read John, the first chapter, and the 11th chapter, starting with the first verse, and see what you think about the story. And then meet me again tomorrow for another of our devotionals, and we'll discuss an extended application of the story of Jesus and Lazarus. Until tomorrow, be blessed.